So let's take a look at a map of land the Qing ceded to the Russian Empire. We can see here the land ceded in yellow under the 1858 Aigun Treaty was approximately 600,000 square kilometres. 2 years later, under the 1860 Treaty of Beijing, a further 400,000 square kilometres of land that you can see here in pink was designated as a Sino-Russian joint administration area east of the Ussuri River. However, this territory was later permanently ceded to Russia. Chris, let me come to you first. President Lai's comment, some media have distorted the point that President Lai was making. He wasn't urging China to invade Russia. What do you think was the president's message?
Well, I think it served, I think he had several aims. One was to drive a wedge between Russia and China, who are becoming closer all the time now, by bringing up this sensitive turn of events in the 19th century where China lost a lot of territory, and it really hampered the development of the Chinese Northeast. I think also it's another way of showing that maybe there's a new administration, a new tack, where there's maybe going to be a little more teeth to comments, whether they're aimed at China or at Russia.
Mm. And how about on the point of the consistency of China's narrative?
China's never really been known for consistency of narrative, but I mean, most countries haven't. But you know, when you look at, like, for instance, the treaty that China signed with the UK that brought back the Hong Kong and other territories ceded during the Qing. You know, that was very important to China, but you know, other treaties can be overlooked.
Mm, okay, and Professor Chen, how about for you? Anything else that you read from the point that the President was making?
I think if we pay attention to the context of President Lai's remarks, his speech, or his answer to the reporter's question, you will realize that the key point of his message was not actually so much focused on Sino-Russian relations or the ceded territory to Russia or Russian Empire, but rather on the contradictions or inconsistencies in China's territorial claims. So if the current PRCs claim to have inherited all the imperial territories from the past and refuse to relinquish any, then why insist that Taiwan is part of China, but not claim the lost territories in China's northeast, Manchuria as well? I think the focus still is on China's strategy today rather than in the past.
So basically, and what he was saying is there is no justification to take Taiwan.
Right. I believe that's President Lai's message, revealing that he believed that China's territorial claim regarding Taiwan, and also inherently maybe other territorial disputes in the Western Pacific, these claims have little to do with the so-called territorial integrity. Instead, it is about seeking dominance. Right. In this part of the world. Yes,
and he talked about international or Western Pacific hegemony at the end of that quote that we did. Chris, you know, the Aigun and Beijing treaties were part of, actually it was Sun Yat-sen that coined the term unequal treaties, and this was during a period from 1840 to around 1950. Can you tell us how they occurred?
Well, I mean, they began by the Qing falling apart. The Qing was weak, and I believe the 1858 Treaty of Aigun was a direct result of Tsarist Russia challenging the Qing and saying, look, you know, we're going to take this if you don't just give it to us, you know. And merely by threatening war, they got the Qing to sign it over. They weren't happy, of course, but they were dealing with the Taiping Rebellion at the time, so they had their hands full.
That was Russia that we've spoken about, but there was actually, you know, several Western powers, weren't there, that negotiated or forced upon Qing Empire these unequal treaties.
Yes, indeed. So one episode of war and a conflict led to another one, and the domestic conflicts got convoluted with external pressure, challenges, and the disputes and armed conflicts. So this is a layer upon layer of the so-called unequal treaties. And then,
but did it actually, was the root of all of this, was it the Opium War?
that was the first major episode of armed conflict between the West, which is the British Empire, and China, the Qing dynasty. So that's the beginning of these unequal treaties or a century of humiliation era.
And we should also mention, of course, Taiwan was ceded to Japan in 1895, and that lasted for 50 years. So, Chris, a little bit further then, in today's era, though, what have those unequal treaties, what has the century of humiliation, what's it come to represent for the CCP or even for Xi Jinping personally?
Well, I don't know about Xi Jinping personally, but for the party, it's been a huge provider of legitimacy. So there's no elections, no one's ever voted Xi Jinping. No private citizens have ever voted Xi Jinping or the Communist Party into power. So they have to claim legitimacy through other means, and dredging up a century of tragedy and exploitation and war. It's a very good way to establish some sort of credibility. And the reality is that China did suffer quite a bit for that period of time. So it's not like there's nothing there to work with, but then you start getting into questions of like, okay, where do we draw the line? How far back do we want to go? Is the Qing Chinese? Questions like that. And I mean, they were Manchurian, and they brought together the biggest empire that had ever existed since the Mongolian Empire, and the ROC wanted to keep it together to whatever extent it could. The PRC is trying to revive it by incorporating Taiwan and other places, but there's still lots of places like Arunachal Pradesh, which China calls Southern Tibet, but it's a state in India that's administered by India. That used to be claimed by the Qing.